James, Slater, and Mules are present, and Commissioner Malloy is absent. Does anyone have any changes to the agenda? Okay. Any changes to the workshop minutes from last time, from July 31st? Nobody? Okay. Then if somebody wants to move to approve those?
I so move.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'll do the poll for conflict of interest. Does anyone believe that they have a conflict of interest with ORA 25-0005, Family Utility Division of Lands, ORA 25-0006, Road Standards, or ORA 25-007, Data Centers? No conflicts? Okay. What we're going to do today is divide this hearing into two. We're going to take the first two issues as a one hearing, and then do our deliberations, and then take the data centers as a separate hearing. So the comprehensive plan analysis has been done on each of these issues. What we'll do is open the hearing for ORA 25-0005, Family and Utility Division of Land, and ORA 25-0006, Road Standards. And Director Callahan will provide an overview of these ordinances and answer questions that planning commissioners may have. Then the hearing will be open for public comments on those two issues. Once all comments have been heard, the public hearing will be closed and commissioners will enter into deliberation on these issues. Once a decision has been reached, the chair will open the public hearing for ORA 25-0007. That's data centers. And Director Callahan will provide an overview to that and answer questions the planning commissioners will have. Next, the hearing will be open for public comments on that issue. And once all comments have been heard, the public hearing will be closed and the Planning Commission will enter deliberations on that issue. So at this time, I'll open the public hearing on ORA 25-0005, Family and Utility Division of Land, and ORA 25-0006, Road Standards, and ask Director Callahan for his instruction.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. The two ordinances that are before you, frankly, merely solidify something that has been in code for a year. The reason, and only reason, it's before you again as a separate ordinance is the first time it was passed on an interim temporary basis. So we must come back around, have this hearing for you to recommend, and then for the county commissioners to have a separate hearing to finally make these changes permanent. I think it's fair to say that the existing code that's before you, having been operative for a year now, has worked well. It's been received well. To my knowledge, there are no public comments or opposition to either of these. Both of these items we have workshopped with you. So I hope that you recall and you're confident that we can go forward today. But of course, Ben and I are here for any questions you may have about details. For the sake of efficiency, I'll stop there and wait for questions.
I just have a clarification. The number 7 on section, what is this, 3, 4?
Which
Four,
ordinance
five,
are we
six,
talking
seven.
about, sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry. On the first one, Family and Utility Division of Lands, 8.6 down to J. number 7, where it says the parcels created pursuant to the subsection, which are located within an area of city impact shall be exempt. That's just because then they're removed out of the county's jurisdiction, correct? So then this wouldn't
It's-
apply to that.
It's to ensure that the city's regulations don't apply to family exemptions, because otherwise they would.
Sorry.
I'll wait till you catch up. You want me
Repeat
to
that.
repeat that?
Yes, please.
Okay, I know there's stuff going. This makes it clear that the exemptions are not part of a review by the city, because if this language were not in there, they would be, and the city's regulations would apply. So, and that would make the family exemptions unworkable, because you'd have curb and gutter for things that is supposed to be family
Okay.
uses in the county.
Just,
That
yep,
help you?
yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Any questions on either one? Okay, then we will open the public comment. If there are any comments on these two issues, please come forward and. Mic on. If there are any questions, please identify which issue you're speaking about. Do we have anybody for either 0005 or 6? Apparently not. Okay. Then we will close the public hearing and open deliberations for these two. Anybody want to go first?
Madam Chair, I should mention, it would be useful if you, in my view, if you'd make a suggestion to approve each ordinance separately. So a motion and a second, I mean, for
Okay.
each ordinance. That way it's clear in the record that they're being passed
Great.
and you're recommending approval or denial
Or-
to the county commissioners.
Okay. Does anybody want to do that for 00005?
I recommend that we pass 005.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Harwood,
Second.
Commissioner Volz,
Aye.
Commissioner James,
Aye.
Commissioner Malloy.
He's not here.
Oh, sorry. Commissioner Batson,
Yeah, aye.
Commissioner Slater,
Aye.
Chair David.
Aye. Okay, then we'll proceed with 0006.
I move to pass ORA 25-0006, road standards.
A second.
Commissioner Harwood, Commissioner,
We're voting.
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles,
Aye.
Commissioner James,
Aye.
Commissioner Malloy. Oh, sorry, absent. Commissioner Batson,
Aye.
Commissioner Slater,
Aye.
Chair David.
Aye. Okay, that was quick. Okay, we'll now open the public hearing for ORA 250007, data centers at 147. And again, we'll ask Director Callahan to explain this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, as before, we've workshopped this item. You should be generally familiar with it. But let me back up and give you the big picture and for the audience's sake. Data centers are not currently addressed in the current Land Use and Development Code at all. And so arguably, they could be a by right use in certain zoning districts where uses of this nature are allowed. You may recall data centers can be many millions of square feet in floor area. They can use up 500,000 to millions of gallons of water a day. They use an amount of electricity sufficient to power 1,000 or more homes a day. So they have tremendous impact on a community. And that's among the reasons why I asked for and the board agreed for a moratorium to allow us to get the language that's in front of you today together. I should say that the draft we have is a pretty typical approach to conditional use permits, where we list out the kinds of things that are minimally required for an applicant to go through the process, and then make it clear that these things get referred to our regular sister agencies for their comment and review. So groups like DEQ, Panhandle, well, Department of Environmental Quality, Panhandle Health Department, et cetera, will all have a chance to weigh in and tell us what they think about any such use. So in the usual conditional use permit way, this is a way that the staff can analyze, the hearing examiner and the board can decide whether a data center actually is a good fit for any location it might be proposed. And the other nice thing about a conditional use permit is the commissioners can ultimately deny it if they think it's not a good fit and it can't be conditioned in a way that fits appropriately within the county. So I think it's a useful thing to do. I hope you agree. But we're at the early stages of this. I think it's useful to stay mindful that no ordinance, in my view, is permanent. Once we get through a data center review, assuming we get one, we will most assuredly learn things, and that will probably be a good time to circle back around and reconsider the ordinance that we have on the books at that time. So I trust that you recall these things are malleable, we can adjust with time. But I just wanted the public to be aware of that. The other thing I think you may hear from the public today that I think is worth entertaining is the notion of just not allowing data centers at all. I think that's worthy of consideration, but I'll leave it at that. So with that, unless you have concerns of anything that's written in the staff
I have
report.
questions for you.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Come on,
There you
okay.
are.
What's the real-life situation with data centers? I mean, do we have companies applying right now?
We do not. We had one that was interested and made it clear that they might, but they didn't actually apply, to my knowledge. Is that right? That's correct.
All right. And do you have facts that lead you to believe that we will have companies trying to open data centers or a data center?
I don't have facts. I have data that suggests it could happen, like we have sufficient power through our two major suppliers. I've spoken with the Vista staff. They confirmed that it is in fact possible for them to provide sufficient power. We know that there's sufficient water in the aquifer to make one of these things work. The worrisome part about that to me is that we have no idea how that water would be used and how and if and when, over what time frame, it might enter back into the aquifer.
You sketched some of the potentially negative sides or the consumption side of these data centers. Can you give more detail on that? And then I'm going to come back and ask about the positive stuff. But what's the downside to data centers from a standpoint of
Long-term,
the county and keeping everything stable and fair for everybody?
I can think of two things that are worrisome to me. When you have data center equal to the Los Angeles Strip in size, and that's no overstatement. These things are millions of square feet and up. That has an enormous impact on the visual quality of the county. And especially, I know we're growing with all of our cities, but I, for one, if I was working for a city, wouldn't want a data center on the edge of my city, because that has enormous consequences too in the way that a city grows and develops. So it's hard to nail down, frankly, Mr. James, the impact of a visual quality, but it's
Well, there you're invoking more the visual quality. This would
Yes,
be
sir.
probably, I mean, I'm suspecting these data centers aren't built on mountainsides. They're probably built
On flat land.
on flat land that would otherwise be available for home ownership and individual families and that kind of thing.
That's exactly true, but the point I'm trying to make, apparently insufficiently, is that a data center, whether it's 20 feet tall or 100 feet tall, if it's many football fields in size, that creates an impact in a way that's unlike anything else in the county.
Okay. So that's one. You said there were
That's one.
two.
The transportation impacts are unknown, but assuredly they're high when the data center is being built because of all the truck traffic required to bring in the enormous amounts of construction materials. And so not only our highway districts, but our ITD would be impacted.
Am I wrong to think, though, given the first year focus on the more aesthetic nature of it, but I'm looking at a county that's, already it's growing exponentially. We only have limited areas where we could build. There's a lot of public lands that you just, can't build on. And this thing sounds pretty enormous. And am I wrong to be concerned about, and it's going to be there for a long time, am I wrong to be concerned it may deprive citizens in the county from being able to use that land to build homes and affordable homes and family dwellings and so forth?
That's spot on. The other thing that is along those lines that's worrisome to me is what other land uses besides housing might we have possibly even open space if we had a program for such.
Sure, that kind of goes in the bigger bucket of, we have citizens in the county right now who could use this land in other beneficial ways, whether home ownership
Or
open
agriculture,
space or
I guess.
agriculture or whatever it is,
Right.
yeah. And we're talking about a company coming from probably outside of the community and taking over that land on a relatively permanent basis that will deprive the county citizens from using it.
Yes, sir.
Is that, am I on
I think you're
target?
spot on. I think, I'll add on to it, if you don't mind, just say, I think it creates a permanent impact in ways that'll last generations.
Well, the other concerning thing I'm hearing is doesn't sound like there's been a lot of analysis on the potentially large impacts on water, on, not only land use that we're talking about, but the water resources and the power resources it'll be using up. Because, I mean, if just supply and demand economics, if it takes up a significant amount of power resources, or it sounds like it would, then that's going to drive cost of power up for everybody.
And what does that do for everyone else for other long-term uses? Does it affect our economy 10 years from now? Because using your thought, we don't have as much energy as we might otherwise.
Yeah, usually those things you don't find out until you're too far gone.
Yes.
But what about the plus side? What about any analysis of the jobs it would bring in, the
Of course, the
economy?
construction impact is enormous. You get billions of dollars circulating through the economy. The old economist rule is every dollar circulates 4 times before. Every dollar circulates 4 times in the economy before it lands in a bank. So there's usefulness of that, I'll grant you. There's presumably some number of pretty high-end jobs by IT experts. I have no idea what that is. I assume it's not a lot because in the IT world, you don't need a great number of people to run enormous, large computer systems. We know that from our own county system,
Okay.
for instance. But there would be some jobs associated with it,
So what you're describing is you'd have a pulse of jobs during the construction phase,
an enormous one, but then it backs off considerably.
but then on a long-term basis, you're relatively small impact to the
Small
county.
group, but high end. Those are probably, I'm guessing, but those are probably $100,000 a year jobs. So there is some economic benefit to it, certainly. I think the other answer to your question is we don't really know all the details because data centers are a pretty new creature.
One last area I want to question on. If we choose to deny data centers for now, because we just don't have enough information, is there an escape valve if later we get enough information to decide, no, this is a good thing, we should do it? I mean,
How does that work?
yeah, how does that work?
We do the same thing we're doing right now. We bring this sort of ordinance forward, announce it through the public hearing process, see how it goes.
I'm going to ask you a tough question. Do you think it's premature because we don't have enough data and information to pass an ordinance like this?
To deny one, you mean, or to pass this one?
To pass it, do you think it's premature to do that, or, and just, in other words, deny data centers for now? Just
Deny them altogether.
deny them outright, until we have more information to fashion a better ordinance.
This, what we're doing now would not deny them, would it? This is
That's
just
correct.
putting
It would not.
regulations, minimum regulations, correct?
That's right. I took Mr. James' question to mean if you were to recommend denial and the board denied,
We can still recommend denial. We don't
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
support.
but this here,
Right.
this here is just, yeah, okay.
is that correct?
I'm trying to understand the dynamics of this. Do you support this ordinance?
There's
I
one
do.
other issue to consider here too,
I'll get
if
to it.
if they're gonna extract, water from the aquifer, you have to get a water right for that. You have to get a water right for that use of that water. So that's,
And it would
that's
go
gonna be
through
a key,
Right.
a key process that would probably stop most of these proposals anyway. So there's other ways to regulate this activity, and I
Glad
think
you
we
brought that
we
up.
made an attempt to do that here without just blanket denial. So I'm a
glad
little
you brought
concerned
that
about blanket denial because of a person's property rights and other things like that.
Well, I'll piggyback on that to answer your question. I kind of like what we have because my experience over the last 45 years of looking at land use planning projects is that we may very well get surprised by some ingenious new data center that uses less energy, less water, and is less impactful because it's smaller. One can well imagine under those circumstances, it might be a good thing somewhere in the county in the right location. Piggybacking on Mr. Harwood's comment, I think it's useful for you to know when we look at the county overall right now, you'll recall that this is only proposed to be allowed in the industrial and light industrial zoning districts. When you do the math for the county, that's 0.5% of the zoning in the county right now, those two districts. So we're not talking about more than 4,000 acres in the entire 800,000 acres of the county that could possibly be developed through this process.
So you're supportive of this. What I'm gathering from it is you feel like you're getting ahead of the curve a little bit.
Yes,
It
sir.
might, you might need to tweak it,
Yes, sir.
but you're getting ahead of the curve, and that's why you like it.
Exactly. This is a case where I'd rather be protected than naked, if you'll pardon the expression.
Couple things. First off, my first thing is the water.
Yeah.
You look at Post Falls and most of the places right now, I mean, they're already on water restrictions, and we keep building and we keep pulling water out of the aquifer. I mean, we're already, and that's my main concern. My other concern is, and I don't know whether it's possible or not, I mean, if we were to say, okay, we complete denial, what would, or would it be possible for Post Falls or Rathdrum to incorporate some of this land into their city and for them to authorize it? I don't know.
Yes, sir. It is
I mean, it
possible.
would be possible, and, you know,
It is entirely possible, as long as it's within their AI, which would, I
Well, 'cause
say AI
it-
because we have new AIs coming online that will replace the area of city impact agreements we currently have. The new AIs will rein in the areas that the cities can annex to no more within 2 miles of their corporate limits. But it would be entirely possible for them to annex and build.
Because, I mean, you see the way some of these cities are building now, I mean, it seems to me, and I may be wrong, but it seems to me they're looking at taxes and what they can get from taxes, and they just keep building. And,
I would strongly encourage the cities to adopt an ordinance like this, or, similar to it, to also restrict data centers within their cities and not have their cities be an island of non-regulation in a sea of county where it is highly regulated.
okay, so
Or it would be highly regulated.
if we were to adopt this, well, then is that something that we would go to the cities within the county, go to and work with them to get them to also adopt it so that they could we're all on the same page, so we could have a little bit of, I mean, but that's not saying as soon as we do something like this, Spokane County is gonna say, well, they're not doing it, so let's, but there's nothing we can do there. But like Terry said, the they've gotta get rights for the water, but hopefully the government will stick with us and
Right.
do
I
something
have two
about it.
suggestions, if I may, Madam Chair. Yes, Mr. Villas, that is entirely possible. My suggestion is you, as the Planning Commission, if you recommend approval, back it up with a recommendation to the commissioners that they talk with the cities, mayors, and councils and suggest what you just did. Or empower the staff to reach out. The other avenue that we could approach is simply an intergovernmental agreement with the cities on how we would regulate these things.
Everybody's gotta be on the same page or it's not gonna do us any good.
But that's either one or both
Yeah.
of those are things you could recommend as part of your recommendation today.
And maybe if you explain the intergovernmental agreement, and I've used them in the past, and I understand, but I mean, some other folks may not, but just for a second here.
An intergovernmental agreement, also known as the IGA, is nothing more than a contract between two willing partners, in this case, the city and the county. The contract can specify anything, but here we would lay out exactly the parameters of how and where data centers would go in both the cities and the counties, and why.
So, if we approved this, then is, what they would do is the county would get together with them, they'd take this format and take it to the cities, and then they would rehash it over and come up with one that they would all work with, is that correct?
More than likely, the cities will come up with their own ordinances that may or may not look like ours.
Okay.
But that's where the IGA may come in handy, frankly.
Okay.
Yeah, even if they did come up with their own, the intergovernmental agreement would deal with that. It's like a contract, between the
Right.
parties, and,
Right. Right.
everybody likes to have their own regulations, you know that.
Yes,
But
sir.
I mean, I think the intergovernmental agreement is a good way to deal with something like, of this nature.
David, just a clarification, you said it was industrial and light industrial, and what was that percentage?
0.5%.
0.5%, and
Works
how,
out to be about, if I remember right, I'm talking roughly in the 4,000 acre range.
and how many of
We're gonna do
those,
the math while we're waiting, but you actually had it on a spreadsheet.
how
You
many
sent
of
to me,
those
I think.
acres?
Oh, no, it was Garrett sent it to me.
How many of those acres actually then are contiguous or butt up to residential or any type of residential zoning?
Ben can pull some of that up by example right now.
Yeah, most of our light industrial zoning is kind of along the corridor or the area of Beck Road, Highway 53. I'll kind of zoom in on that area here. And
Essentially Pleasant View west of the state line between Highway 53 and I-90.
yeah, let's turn
The
on-
airport's zoned industrial, but one would assume that's off limits.
Light industrial. And then there's some areas north of Hayden along US 95 that are zone light industrial or industrial. The one that's zone industrial is the mill Choco Mill.
Choco Mill, yeah.
Right. So we're talking
House.
relatively little, especially industrial. There's very little in land zone industrial in the county. The bulk of it's actually BNSF right of way. In our Prairie Solid Waste Facility as well.
We do, oh, sorry.
Most of the area that's zoned either light industrial or industrial is zoned light industrial.
Right.
And again, it's mostly in that West Post Falls corridor.
And how much of those could possibly be absorbed into AIs?
Let me pull that up for you. At least what the current map is. These are subject to change. Actually, let's see. I don't know if that was good enough there, but
Well, he's pulling that up for you. That you may not know, the dark gray and the light gray are our industrial districts. Light gray is light industrial, dark gray is industrial. So Ben's overlaying the AIs on top of that right now, so you can answer your question.
it's kind of difficult to see. But all of this industrial and light industrial zoning is within an area of city impact currently. And I don't think there's any expected changes to that. With regards to this area, they are outside of, you can kind of see the boundaries of those areas of city impact. So these areas are outside of any ACI boundaries. You know, I will offer that we have seen in the recent past a couple of requests for zone changes specifically to light industrial. One that was recently approved within this corridor here, and that was the application or the applicant that David's mentioned earlier, that they had at least mentioned the idea that they were considering a data center, but they didn't have anything concrete. Another application that we're currently processing, again, they haven't mentioned to us any relation to a data center, but is just north of the Silverwood area within the ACI of Athol. That's about an 80-acre parcel that they're requesting light industrial zoning as well. But that's currently in review, and so. those
And
are
no
just-
mention of a data center.
No mention of a data center for that particular request.
Have any of the cities been approached to have data centers put in the cities? Do you
Not to
know?
my knowledge, but it's not the sort of thing they tell me readily.
Yeah, I know. Communication.
I will say they send out referrals once they're about to do something, meaning a subdivision or so on. And I certainly haven't seen any data centers that are formally announced that way. What I don't know is any conversations the city staff may have had about potential development.
Has anybody advocated for data centers in the county?
Not
Does
to my
anybody-
knowledge.
I mean, I'm wondering what, you know, the minority that's not here, what they would say and why we should have data centers. But we don't have anybody who's done that, who's spoken out.
Not that I am aware of.
Well, I think, you know, just going based on the demand that AI and artificial intelligence, the application of those things is that there's just a surge in interest and use of those abilities, and we're going to continue to grow in that. And in order to facilitate those needs, they currently require these types of facilities to generate that type of computing capabilities that just require a lot of energy and a lot of resources. So I think if you were to ask, you know, people that would be interested in those, first off, people generally, by and large, not everybody, but like the capabilities that AI actually offers. But then there are also businesses that are trying to incorporate those tools into their different programs and things. So there's certainly an interest in expanding those abilities. I would say that would be probably the argument in support of those things.
Yeah, it seems to me there's a little friction there in that, not discounting the social good or societal good maybe of AI. That's still out for debate, I suppose, but assuming for the sake of the argument, it's a beneficial thing overall for all of us. We're dealing with a micro situation here, a county with limited resources, limited water, limited land, and citizens who are already starting to bump up against each other. We've seen that with other ordinance. We've tried to navigate some of the problems, the minor subdivision, majors, all this stuff. And then you have this argument that's beneficial for the society as a whole, the world as a whole. But that sort of, there's a little dissonance in my mind between, well, but is it good for the county overall? You know, I'm sure there's people in the county who love AI and think it's great because they can, I don't know, my kids like it. I don't know why. It does things for, they have fun with it. But, you know, me, not so much. But my concern, because it's supposed to be on this board, is for the county. You know, what's best for the county. It may be good for people back east and all that. That's great, good for them. But is it good for us to have this data center here in our county? And it's sounding like there's so many unknowns. It's a bit scary to think about one of these things coming in.
If we were to deny this and recommend, can we then recommend another moratorium and put a time frame on that? Or what would the process be if this is denied?
I'll defer to Pat. I believe the commissioners could extend it. They have to have a rational basis. Pat, can you jump in?
I'll have to look up the statute, but they're actually very limited in the ability to impose moratoriums. I think there's a waiting period between one moratorium and when you can impose another, and I'm looking that up as I talk.
Yeah, I'll look it up while we're talking.
Is there a moratorium on it now?
There was, but it ended in August.
You know, looking at this from the standpoint of we need something now. And this provides, I think, a lot of protection and a lot of regulation for a proponent to go through. And if we approve this now, and we want to consider just total, you know, no answer, you know, in the future we can do that. But at least if we implemented this one now, we've got some protection on our statutes. Right now, I don't think we've got anything. I mean, the moratorium's off and everything else. So this might be the best way, if nothing else, an interim to take another look at possibly just denying these things from any standpoint. But I'd be really concerned if we don't get something on the statutes right now to protect the community from the impacts of these kinds of things, and then put something into effect that has a whole series of processes these individuals would have to go through. And like you said and I said, the water right's going to be a big deal, guys. It really is. So, but I think that as far as I'm concerned, this gets us started down the road and protects the county against these kinds of things.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I agree, and I share the concern about water and the impact of their need. So it's very concerning, but at least this gives us some parameters to say no.
To answer Commissioner Batson's question, the commissioners could not adopt an emergency moratorium, but they could adopt an interim moratorium. They would have to have a public hearing prior to doing that. That would give them a year to further study the issue. So that is an option, or, you know, the ordinance before you is another option, of course.
Well, and they could do that anyway. We could recommend this to them, and if they wanted to do a moratorium, they could do it.
That's
right?
true, too.
Yeah. But you favor this over moratorium because it sounds to me like you guys are in agreement that it helps you to get ahead of the curve and get some control over this thing before it takes off.
There's that, and I have a lifetime of processing conditional use permits that makes me feel comfortable that this is a good process for these kinds of uses.
And it would limit it to a very small portion of lands within the county where it would even be possible.
That's the 0.1%.
Yeah.
But they could rezone,
They can always ask,
yes.
but remember, that's a rather arduous process, and they have to prove that they're meeting the sections of the land use code that require a showing that it's the proper thing to do.
Could we do a complete denial? I mean,
Yes, sir.
A complete prohibition, you mean?
yeah,
Yes, sir.
I mean, could we do that and?
You could recommend that,
legally?
yeah.
Yes.
And how, I mean, of course, if they wanted it bad enough, then we'd take it to court and we'd tie it up in court for however long. I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking.
Yeah, I
certainly
mean,
could
I think
recommend.
we're kind of surging into deliberations. I think it's probably a good time to listen
Open
to the
up
public.
for the public.
Okay, we will open to public comment. And we'll start with Bill, last name? Breezer. And I understand that you are taking time for your wife as well, so you can have 6 minutes.
That's correct. Thank you. My name is Bill Breezy. I am a retired architect, and I was going to save my punch list for last, but my punch list, that's the architect talking to me, my punchline for last. I spoke with the CDC director for Hayden, and Donna Phillips has told me just this morning that data centers is not an allowed use in Hayden. They have basically banned it. Okay, so let me start with property rights, if I might. I fully believe that one should be able to do anything they want to with the property that they own. But in my opinion, someone's property rights ends when those rights infringe on neighboring properties or neighborhoods. And these rights, including what you've talked about today, water, electricity, as well as building use, location, and massing. Data centers are, as described, water and energy hogs. For many years, the Spokane-Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer has been dropping, and this is the only source of water in this area. A potential $1 million per day, million gallon per day water use will quickly lower this table even quicker. Electricity could be solved by the data center by providing nuclear power or photovoltaic. We all know the issues with nuclear, but with several acres of photovoltaic panels that will be required to power the center, you're going to see what we call heat island effect, which means you're changing the atmosphere around the vicinity of this. It will modify plant life, and who knows what it's going to do to wildlife. And if something goes wrong with nuclear power, the heat island effect will be meaningless. And what about the rights of the 500,000 people or so in Kootenai County and Spokane Valley who have the rights for adequate and dependable water and electricity? This building will be massive and could be considered an eyesore from miles away, actually depreciating the value of the properties that it's close to. Now my comments on the draft ordinance. Zones permitting this use are light industrial and industrial. The definition of industrial from Law Insider is, and I'm going to read, those activities involving land use for manufacturing of food products, apparel and fabric, timber and wood products, furniture and fixtures, paper products, printing and publishing, chemicals, petroleum products, plastics, leather goods, stone, clay, you get the message. They're creating and producing widgets. A data center does not do that. So is industrial and light industrial the right place to put this? That's up to you to decide, but I would think not. And what does design that blends in with the surrounding areas look like? And how will this be regulated? If the surrounding areas are the prairie, how would this building blend in with the surrounding area? All utilities should be undergrounded, and because those overhead lines are eyesores and a blemish to the natural beauty of our prairie. Water usage, how does that not impact water supply when $1 million gallons a day are being used for seasonal rainfall? Now, this water that they're using is being used to specifically cool the building. There's a bunch of electronics in there, and it's a giant cooling tower. You've seen the power plant out in the Rathdrum Prairie. That's what it's going to be like. None of that water gets recycled and put back into the aquifer unless it rains. It just dissipates and it's gone. So, you know, and the aquifer recharge plan, like I said, how do you do that? You're not going to be able to recharge with this type of facility. This facility will need to have fire sprinklers, yet the facility will not want traditional water fire sprinklers. They will need to use halon gas. And what halon does basically is when it's released into the room, the oxygen is gone like that.
Right.
Because they don't want water messing up with their equipment. And so that means the people that work in there are going to have oxygen tanks and oxygen masks on just because of the hazard of that. Because if that kicks off, those people are history. It is very dangerous. And think about the Prime Warehouse complex, the big warehouses that are just on the other side of the Washington border along Highway 53. That's what a data center is going to look like. Is that what we want our? We do not need data centers in Kootenai County, and I suggest you just do like Hayden did and say, not in our backyard. I was also expecting a councilman from Hayden to show up because he's our aquifer expert on that board, and he gave me some talking points, and I've done this at one of the rezonings for Rathdrum, but the U.S. Geological Society has been tracking the depth of water level for several decades, offering invaluable data on the aquifer health. Fluctuations in water levels over the 18 years were primarily attributed to weather patterns and affecting aquifer levels. However, the data from 2018 to the present presents a worrisome picture indicating clear and sustained drop in water levels at the same time as rapid growth is occurring. This is from, you know, a snippet of one of the presentations from the Aquifer Protection Board, which only deals with water quality and not water quantity. So they cannot deny an application because of water quantity is not there. Our aquifer is a sole source aquifer as identified by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and a sensitive resource aquifer by the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality. Our aquifer plays a vital role in sustaining our community's water needs. Actually, it's the only water that we have available to us. If that thing disappears or gets contaminated, we have to move. You know, in 1978, our aquifer became the second aquifer designated as a sole source aquifer by the Environmental Protection Agency. So this goes back a long time. Protecting and maintaining the aquifer's quality is considered critical for the community. And I think that's all I have to say. So thank you for listening.
Amy Farnstrom.
Hi, I'm Amy Fonstrom. Thank you so much for your service. We appreciate you. Bill said everything, I mean, amazing, all of this stuff. My biggest concern is the environmental impacts. Just like you said, these centers will not only affect plants and animals and things like that in our aquifer, but people aren't going to want to live by them. I think if more people knew truly what was going on, they would we'd have a packed room, I feel like. So we need to really spread the word, I feel like. They had mentioned it would bring in a lot of work, but it would be out-of-state contractors because our contractors couldn't handle the work. So that would be, money would be going out for that as well. So I don't think there would be as much of a financial benefit as we think. I don't think there's long-term benefits, and I think that even with AI and things like that, we need to slow things down. And Kootenai County, I'm an Idaho native, and I really feel like things are just growing too fast, too quick, too much AI, too much, too many things like that. We just need to slow it down. I think that's about it, but I ask that you do a complete denial. And down the road, if somebody else wants to try to build one again, then let's let them do it then. But for now, I think we should just deny completely. So thank you so much.
Cheryl Scola.
Hello, thank you. So I work on the, oh, yeah, I'm trying to do my toes. Thank you, Dave. Okay. So I work on the river and trying to speaking of slowing things down, slowing down the development because our river is at stake. So my experience with working on the river has been that the departments, when someone mentioned that DEQ could make a statement about maybe the bad effects or impacts on our county, my experience is none of the the departments make any statements. They just point and defer to the other departments. So that's where you get into everybody's pointing at someone else and it's no one's responsibility. So I don't think we want to rely on DEQ to make a recommendation. I would like to say that as far as a Vista saying that we have enough water or power or whatever it is that we can supply, if it's for they equal 1,000, what's required for 1,000 homes per day, if I understood right. Oh, okay. Anyway, so I'm thinking they're probably not taking into consideration the developments that have already been approved or are in the future to be approved, because we have been going lickety split with developments. I mean, every time I turn around, there's a new apartment building, there's a new skyscraper, there's a new housing development, and there's no more farmland. And so I think we need to think about that as part of our slowing it down. I do like what the woman said about, Amy, said about the job situation. It may benefit us for a short term for construction, but A1B visas or whatever that's H1B visas usually come from other countries to do AI work because they're cheaper. And we've seen that discussion happening in the past year. And so we don't need to bring jobs for other countries, we need to help Kootenai County and Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls and the surrounding cities. So I don't think that should be taken into consideration. We want to have some wide open space, and we don't want to change. And technically, I live in Post Falls, and it sounds like the zoning that they're talking about is going to be kind of in my backyard. So I was a little disturbed to hear that. And I don't think any amount of money is worth, whoever's going to get rich on this, it's not worth trading what we have here in Kootenai County, the beauty, the animals, the everything. And so let's don't trade that away. Let's protect our cities and just deny it 100%. And then we don't have to worry about anything. Thank you.
Scott Schofield.
I can put it up a little taller. Thank you guys for your service. Pretty much everything's been said. I'm going to start out by saying I'm opposed to this. And we don't need to get into your question about the jobs, to echo what my wife said, that we don't need to import jobs here from other countries. We're already seeing that happening nationally with companies trying to build here. Car companies they're wanting to build their factories here and yet import their employees. And so I believe the Trump administration is saying, well, if you're going to do that, you need to train American employees to do the job. So we don't need to import outside laborers to come into this area for the jobs. The AI jobs are going to take a lot of the jobs anyway, I feel. Concerning to me that I haven't heard here, and maybe I'm not exactly sure how the capacity of what these data centers are, but we've got 5G, we've got license plate readers. We're becoming a surveillance state. Are these data centers going to be collecting our data? You guys need to be thinking about that. What impact is that going to be? I could be off base on it, but something you need to ask those questions about when you're looking at putting one of these facilities here. We do live on the river, and we're seeing our water already going down because it seems to be there's some shortage in Spokane with some of the fires that have happened this year. We've already had enough discussions on the water. It's going to gravely impact our water, and who knows what our winters are going to be like with all this geoengineering that's going on above us. I can't even get my solar cameras to charge. I've had them for about 3 years, and this year was the first year that I noticed that they're not recharging. They've been in the same place forever. The only thing I can attribute that to is anecdotal, but it's probably the geoengineering that's going, because we have a heck of a lot more cloudy days here than we've had in the last 5 years. So I'm opposed to this. We don't need a data center here. It's going to take up too much land. Now, maybe it's just like when the computers first came out, right? The computers was the size of this room. Now you got a computer in your hand. Maybe a data center at some point can get down small enough where it makes a lot more sense to have. Thank you for your time. Oh, and they're loud. My wife just reminded me, the data centers are very loud.
Michael Burns.
Hi there. I'm going to recommend that you all deny this data center. I don't actually have a prepared statement. I just took down a couple notes. I am also very concerned about the environmental concerns, the water usage, the electrical usage, and the impact on the environment. Nonetheless, I'm actually surprised, except for the gentleman that spoke just right before I did, I haven't really heard concerns about the constitutional basis for these data centers. Are they in violation of our constitutional rights? Do we want to live in a society where we have 24/7 surveillance of our citizens? I don't, and I don't want my children and grandchildren to live in that kind of society. Now, I know we're living in the 21st century. This is the modern world, and contrary to what this gentleman said over here, I don't believe that life as we know it is going to come to a screeching halt if we don't allow a data center to be built here in Kootenai County. As far as I'm concerned, data centers actually represent a branch of the military industrial complex and the union of big government and supernatural corporations. And the lady was right, or the gentleman, somebody's going to get rich off of this, and it ain't me. It's probably not you. So at any rate, my main concern is we as Americans are losing our rights. People in the federal government, in the state government, aren't going to preserve those. We need to do what we can to save this country, and I'm asking you to do your job. I thank you, and I appreciate your service.
Donna Mills may wish to speak.
I don't know what else can be said because pretty much everything has been said, but also I second thank you for the work that you're doing. I guess what I can add too is these countries or these companies may not even be U.S. companies. I don't know that they are or that they aren't, but to the point of outside our country, people coming in to work, these are companies that are also coming outside of the country. And like I said, I don't know that data, but I'm making an assumption right now. What I would like to first start off with is the demographics of this room, with the exception of this gentleman in the checkered shirt, are making a lot of decisions for his age group and younger. And I don't really know your age group, but I can see that your hair is not as silver as mine. So I want us to be very mindful from this place forward of who we're making these decisions for, because we're going to be gone soon. But the data center will last forever. Where's that little girl running around? That could be her park. That could be her park. That could be her park or her school or anything else. It could be her future home. And that's what I'm most concerned with, what's going on in our community, is the demographics of people who are making the decisions who may not be considering who it will impact in the next 7 years. I would also like to say that I'm aware that BlackRock, as a company, is buying up land from here to the border north of us as fast as they can. They're ready to turn this whole area into Tahoe. They already bought up Schweitzer Mountain. Idaho is #1 in potatoes. They have the deepest river gorge. We have the largest wilderness area in the Frank Church. We were the first people to put ski lifts in the whole United States. And do you know why? Because we took them from the elite and gave them to the people. Everybody can ski those mountains now because we have ski lifts. 72 different gemstones come out of this state. It is the only place you can find a star garnet. Shoshone Waterfall is 45 feet taller than Niagara Falls. 300 miles of waterway rivers provide this state with white water rafting. And then there's the craters of the moon. This is a phenomenal, gorgeous state that I spent 20 years in, but not have the pleasure of growing up in. I'd like to see it remain the way that the people who actually grew up here, thank you, Amy, knew it to be when they were a child. And as far as the buildings, I mean, my God, I've only been here for 5 years. I was in Moscow for 12 years prior to this, and I've seen in 5 years half of that Rathdrum Prairie disappear to ticky-tack homes. They're gross and they're ugly. And everybody thinks they're cute and normal, but they're unimaginative. Water is a living element. Water is a living element, and we might start asking it what it wants to be used for. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
If anybody is, no one else wants to speak, I come to the end. No calls. Okay.
I have a couple comments. First of all, I hope you folks realize we have nothing to prevent any of this happening right now on the books, okay? So, you know, again, I want to go back to the fact that, this proposal that we have before you, it's on, I don't know, is it working?
Oh, here. There you go.
Oh, okay. So, anyway, again, I'd like to point out that this is a step to protect all you folks from your concerns to start. And we're not proposing building one of these things. We're proposing, rules that will control the activities, and I think that's what's important. I know for those of us that serve in these various areas in government for you as either volunteers or paid people or elected people, it takes a long time to put together, a document like this. So I guess it's up to us to figure out whether or not, if we pass this now, that it gives us some protection and some control over the activities until such a time as the county commissioners or whoever is involved in the process wants to bring forward another proposal, well-written by attorneys and everything, that would give us the opportunity to just deny these things altogether. What was also interesting to me is many of your comments were concerned about the facts of government control of things. Well, if we deny this, it's government control of pretty stiff government control, because you're asking us to consider, not allowing them ever, So, on one hand, government control bothers people, and on the other hand, if your ox is going to get gored, you want government control. So you see what I'm saying, So, but and we're all, I manage a public drinking water system that pumps water out of the aquifer for a community. I'm the guy that's on the line to pump the water to the people and provide clean domestic water. So I understand your concerns about that, but we're exposed, folks, and we don't have anything on the books to control this kind of activity right now, and we need something, and I don't know how fast and how, if it would even pass, if we just say just a blanket denial of ever having any such a thing. And I'm concerned that you get into a big controversy over that, and we still wouldn't have any protection of any kind. So that's why I think it's important for us to consider this, because it does give us a whole lot of control through all the various activities of the various organizations we're talking about here.
It's your call as to whether you want to reopen for the public to discuss things, but normally, once you've heard from the public and cut things off, you don't normally reopen these things, but it's the prerogative of the chair. And you would normally get the persons that moved to close to agree, if we've gotten that far. I can't remember. Okay. So you're still technically in the public hearing process? In that case, you could open it up to the floor if you want to.
Well, technically, I don't think it's normal that we actually address them. I think we're supposed to address you. So Terry is probably out of order on his comments. So you can allow her or not allow. I don't know. I think we're kind of in murky water right now.
This is why it's good to have a motion to close a public hearing and a second and a vote. That way people know that the public hearing is closed and it's just time for deliberations by the
I
hearing
motion
body.
to close the public hearing.
If it's closed, can I still ask the attorney questions?
Well, we have.
Then it comes to us.
Because I have a question for the attorney.
Okay, so do we have a second?
I do.
Jim.
Commissioner Harlan,
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles,
Aye.
Commissioner James, Commissioner Bateson,
So Aye.
Slater,
Aye.
Chair David. Madeline, can you pull your mic a little bit closer? She's having a hard time hearing you.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I can't
Okay,
hear what was said.
Close public hearing.
Now we will enter into deliberations.
Madam Chair,
Who would like to start?
I guess I have a question. I thought that's what we were doing, was deliberating. I wasn't,
We
we
hadn't
hadn't
closed
gotten
public
there yet.
comment.
okay, because I think it's important that we try to address the concerns of the folks that spoke up. And if that's out of order, then
We can do that.
I guess I'm confused.
I'd like to cut to the chase. I think it's pretty obvious, we're all in agreement, we're very concerned about the potential impact of these data centers. Specifically our water, which we all know has, there's danger. And then electricity. So I think we're all on board on that. My question, and I think this is a question for Pat, is what's the better way to move forward? Using this so that we have parameters and that people have to jump through, or a total denial which could go to court and be a problem?
Well, I think you answered your own question. I prefer regulation over prohibition for exactly those reasons. And again, there's very strict performance standards, a number of agencies involved, as Commissioner Harwood stated, as well as a very small portion of county land where this would even be possible. So, to my mind, although I understand and respect the sentiments of the people that want a total prohibition, I think, regulating it down to a very small, instead of this, like it currently is, get it into like this, then I think we're a lot better off.
if I can follow up.
I was just gonna say, I think Commissioner James has some questions.
Well, that was actually getting right into what I was trying to get to is we look at prohibition versus strict regulation is what we're dealing with then. And if you went the prohibition route, my question is going to be the follow-up of what are the legal concerns? Let's say, I don't know who it is, Mike, whoever it is that comes in and wants to do a data center. What is their strongest legal position? Is it if we had a prohibition and they would attack that under some legal theory, or the regulation? What gives the county the strongest legal position?
I think the regulation gives the county the strongest legal position.
What's the theory that they would attack prohibition?
It's kind of hard for me to articulate, but I think just, not allowing it, anywhere. I think there's some case law with sexually oriented businesses, for example. Of course, that's a First Amendment issue also.
Right, that's what
This
I'm
is
thinking,
not.
is you're getting into, yeah, right.
And so, but I just,
I mean, there's got to be a problem if you have a business that's legal, okay? And this kind of gets us in that case law where you have like, sex shops and stuff, where they regulate them down to a point where they essentially regulate them out of existence, and that gets you into litigation.
Mm-hmm.
But so the concept is here, you have a legal business, and you're saying you can't do it in the county. My instincts are telling me there's got to be actual theory on that for the business.
and I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I think it exposes the county to more liability than regulation would. With regulation, at least it's possible somewhere where instead of having to argue that it should be impossible, as you say, a lawful business, can't be, established anywhere. I think that's problematic, and I agree with you on that.
Yeah, and your point is, if the county were attacked on that level, all the land or other zoned areas could be at risk.
Right.
Whereas this has really restricted it down.
Right. I think you've articulated what was kind of difficult for me to articulate, so I agree. I like the back and forth here.
Okay.
I mean, if I had my way, it would absolute denial. But I want to do the safest thing we can do for the long run, for down the road, what is going to be safest for everybody involved down the road. And I think if we limit it the best we can, I just think that's going to be the best way in the long run.
Yeah.
Because we've got some teeth in it. And because I think when you do absolute denial on something, they're gonna come back around and they're gonna fight. But at least if you've got restrictions on something, I think you're going to, where you can put it and what you can and can't do. But with that, and plus the fact that the permit for the water, I think, is going to be a major thing. And like I said, to me, the water is the main thing.
Yeah, bear in mind, I mean, they would, under Idaho water law, they would be junior to everybody, else that, has water rights over the aquifer. And so, they would be the first ones to get cut off if there's a shortage of water.
So that's just
Yeah, well,
I think even, regulation would provide a strong deterrent to these, to be built even if it's not a complete prohibition.
Well, Pat has me persuaded because, when he tells me the county's in the strongest legal position to oppose this, adopting a regulation, that tells me a lot, is how I see it. Because it is about, in the end of the day, what's your strongest legal position?
Right.
If you have one of these companies, because they're going to be a powerful company if they're,
Yeah,
they're doing this kind of work.
A team of lawyers a mile long and big money to defend it.
Well, again, I can only reiterate the fact that we have nothing right now, folks, and that's to me is the scary thing. And with this, like you say, and if you look at the text, there's, the IDWR, there's PhD, there's DEQ, there's all these various agencies that would be involved, and it is anybody that works with water rights knows that that's going to be probably the real kicker on this thing, because that's a tremendous flow. That's a tremendous amount of water, and to get the water right for that out of the aquifer, I mean, they could stick a tube in Pond du Rey and start pumping out of the surface water, I guess, if they had to. But I mean, I'm a little concerned because we have so many bodies of water as well, surface water. The cooling water doesn't have to be the water good enough to drink. It can be water that's not quite that good. So, so the cooling water could be, in fact, pumped out of surface water sources. Yeah, so consider that as well.
Actually, I did some research and I don't think that's quite correct.
I'm sorry, what?
It's not, the research that I did, your last statement is not quite correct. They want to have the purest water, and so and then there is other stuff they put into it, which could be a problem if it does get released back into the aquifer. And I guess that leads me to my stance, which is I would rather put a moratorium back in place or recommend that. We still have a lot of unknowns. We still have a lot of information that maybe we're not quite correct on, and so. Yeah, we don't have anything on the books, but another moratorium would actually give us the time to maybe do more research, find out what's going on in these other places, and then make a stronger case for the county based on fact, not assumption and not supposition. So I'm actually in favor of doing a moratorium, denial with a moratorium.
For nomenclature, and I want to get this right, Pat, for nomenclature, moratorium is not prohibition. Moratorium
Correct.
is just a
Correct.
period of time.
It's kicking the can down the road.
Yeah, basically a temporary prohibition. That would be no more than 1 year.
Yeah.
So that would only buy a year's time, and then you're back to square one.
But to give us that time, I think there's just too much up here that we're questioning, we don't know. And, what was in there as well. And so it's not that I'm against I just don't like making a decision based on unknowns. And there's a lot of unknowns in this. And I don't want to put the county in a financial problem. And when we're basing a decision on a lot of unknowns, that could still happen. Even though we have the best intent, we can still cause a problem. And a moratorium just kind of gives us that buffer.
Well, see, and I'm sympathetic to that, but what's influencing me, Mr. Merkin, is that sounds like you do not want a moratorium. You'd rather have the regulation in place now. And I guess I'm not fully understanding why.
I would frame it differently. It's not that I don't want one, it's that I trust these regulations sufficiently and that we are dealing with such a small area of the county, 0.1%. So, excuse me, 0.5%, which is 1/2 of 1%. And so when you put those two things together, I think we've effectively got a moratorium. And remember that every community development CUP we process can be denied. We just have to have a rational basis. If water is the issue, staff could recommend denial and the commissioners can deny it. And so I circle back to where Commissioner James landed is, I like the CUP process because it gives us something that protects us now and is sufficient that if we need to ban things outright in 6 months, we could.
Sure.
Or 3 months, the commissioners could change
Or
their
more
mind.
strictly regulate them. That last part was what I was gonna say. Also that, I think it's better to have the regulation now instead of, just waiting a year and then most likely adopting the same regulation that's before you now. And, within 6 months, a year, 5 years down the line, if we need to make it stricter or consider banning them outright because of the negative environmental impacts or whatever other reasons, then, we're certainly free to do that.
But I think it's a valid argument that we have we're lacking a lot of data. We're lacking data. But I also think there's a problem with the speed.
I don't know that we're lacking data to the extent that we can't move forward today.
But the other problem is with the change in technology going so fast, it's kind of hard to get your hands on data because it changes. Next year, we have who knows how these data centers are going to be a year from now. So you're sort of chasing the data when technology is moving so fast.
Right, well, yeah, I mean, it's the old issue of, can the law keep up with the technology? And so, that's certainly a legitimate issue. But I think it's one that can be addressed as needed.
Yeah, even the fact that we have to add this data centers to our ordinance, it is just proof of the pudding.
Well, I was going to maybe ask Commissioner Bateson, you believe that there's maybe some lack of data that you have or that we're considering. Could you maybe elaborate on some of the information that you would find beneficial that we could either maybe incorporate into the regulations or that we as staff can maybe help with?
Or, we could potentially table this item, bring back the data, or if you were to recommend to the commissioners and we knew some of your concerns, we could gather that data for the county commissioners.
One of them brought up was water. I didn't know that until you brought that up, that the purer the water, they want the purest water, right?
It's, because it's circulating through their electronics. And so there's issues with the water and the water treatment. And then how is that, what happens? Is it recycled? Is it not recycled? There's some different things. And I just did a very shallow, just try to get a little bit of extra info. And that concerns me, especially because the flattest area is over the aquifer. And the aquifer is a sole, purpose aquifer, and it doesn't have the strata to help with that. And you're talking about size, and I'm actually kind of surprised of Hayden that they would do that, because that's kind of not in their MO. They kind of just, push growth. And but that tells me a lot that there's some issues there that maybe need to delve into, that even if a city's not willing to do that. One of the other ones that I was concerned about was the closeness to the different residential areas. And I know that was addressed with the setbacks and all of that, but 150 feet from a resident's house is really nothing when you're having to deal with something like that, at that size, and that impact, and noise, and everything else, and lights, and parking, because all of that had to be contained in there. And so you're talking about a complete change of that area, and even though there is a light industrial, if that's already there, but you have a residential zone there next to it for whatever old zoning or whatever, now you're looking at changing people's zones and possibly they're now having to move out of their homes if that gets rezoned or when they move and ever. There's just some concerns I have there
That helps a lot.
on,
We can research.
Yeah,
distances.
certainly you can suggest or staff can come back with a greater setback, for example, if that's a concern.
Yeah.
well, honestly, I can't think of, I'll just put it from my perspective. I wouldn't want that anywhere near my property lines. A setback would almost become irrelevant. So how do you contain something like that in a zone where residential would actually never have to deal with that? And I don't know if that's
I think our
possible.
biggest setback in current regulations is 1,000 feet. Mining and industrial, certain mining and industrial uses, and that certainly could be an option here too.
I would agree with Pat. I think we actually could bump the number up significantly and still say, this use could be potentially allowed through a CUP, but it can be no closer than, I'm making this up, a mile from the nearest residential home.
Is there any data on the decibels that it puts out?
There is.
Oh, the sound,
The data I've seen is they're mostly contained and quiet, but I've heard countervailing views. So we'll look into that. We'll look into distances. We'll look into, I've captured everything.
I think one last thing as far, the concern for water, pure water, there's no such thing as pure water unless it's distilled, but the water that we're pumping out of the aquifer doesn't have to be treated because of no bacteriological contamination. It's full of all kinds of minerals. And these cooling towers have to treat all the water they use to drop the minerals out, or you have condensation of those minerals on all of their equipment. So it's not a matter of pure water. Yeah, they want to get as much of the mineral out of the water as possible. So if they pumped out of the aquifer, they'd have to treat every bit of that water before they could use it for cooling, because the water is so very, very hard in the aquifer. In fact, it coats everything, but it's doesn't have the bacteria. That's the problem with the surface water sources. You got bacteria in them. So we got to understand the difference between drinkable water and water that's free of minerals, and that's the biggest issue. They'd have to treat any water they got. They'd have to treat it for mineral content, not bacteriological content.
I will add that the proposed standards do require a noise mitigation plan. Currently, within the light industrial zones, there is a decibel level reading, like a maximum level for industrial uses at the property line. And what the standards, and I have it up here on the board here, but it does require a plan to show that they are within the boundaries that is allowed with typical industrial uses in the light industrial zones. So it is meant to address those to be the same or less impact than other industrial uses are allowed.
And Ben, I'm glad you brought that up, because the current standard in the current industrial zone, it equates to a voice conversation. It can't be louder than this, unmuted.
That's the lowest range. The highest range is a concert.
Well,
What I'm trying to share with you, and please, let's not have a back and forth from the audience to the board. The chair needs to be respected. My point is simply that at the property line, our current regulations prohibit the noise from being louder than a voice conversation. So what you just heard from the audience cannot occur under today's regulations. So that would carry forward with this, and that's why this has this noise mitigation plan.
So, just some random thoughts, but related to the comments today, I found were very helpful. And I want to link it to the data issue. Our architect here brought up some issues that I actually wanted to know more about. The photovoltaic cell issue, that it creates some environmental change. I'm not clear on what that is. And do they use photovoltaic cells? I don't know. I mean, I don't know about these data places, because that consumes even more land if you're going to do that. So whatever we do today, it would be good if we had some sort of further investigation of these centers and gather the data on its impact to the environment and to the populace around them. I don't know if that's something we could do as our little, board here, but, if we vote for this, I think we do, somebody needs to do some research, further research.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, may I suggest an option? Recommend going forward with this, and I guarantee you the staff will research these questions and bring them back to you in a format that you could recommend to amend the ordinance if the county commissioners approve it. That way we would have something on the books potentially, and we'd have backup coming along the way to address the issues raised today.
Yeah, and my comments aren't at all meant to just say the staff didn't do it. I think they did a great job, but the problem I think is the technology is so somewhat unknown and it's moving so fast. It's a lot to get your arms around.
I agree. I just am more comfortable with something than nothing.
Yeah, okay.
Does someone want to make a motion one way or another?
I'll make the motion.
Want to make a motion?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Does that kind of fill in what your
You're asking
your
me?
yes, what your concern was?
I'm trying to weigh the pros and cons of both. I think honestly, for me, I still am hesitant when I don't have the data in front of me. And that, my own little, I guess, motto is if you don't know, you say no. Because it's just hard sometimes to claw something back. We do obviously have that opportunity to do that later, as what David was saying, so we can change that. It's just a recommendation. Obviously, this is just, up to the Board of County Commissioners, but I'm just still hesitant, so.
Outside of the proximity to residential areas and homes, and then maybe the environmental impacts, did you have any other data that would help you?
There was sound, yeah, proximity, specific environmental impacts, including, if they're using the photovoltaic cells and, how that affects them. I think economic, I'd like more data on how it impact,
Taxes.
the cost of power, for the average citizen here. Is it gonna go up because the power demand is so high? Obviously, the aquifer and the water issue is a huge one. Hearing that they need, the purest, however you want to say it, water they can get. Does that
I
mean
made
that-
my motion based on not just this thing on paper, but, Dave, his commitment to us and all that kind of stuff. So,
Okay, so there was a motion.
yeah.
Yeah, well, is there a second?
Just this piece of paper, I was, yeah, he made a commitment to us, so, yeah. So.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Commissioner Harwood,
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles,
Aye.
Commissioner James,
Aye.
Commissioner Bateson,
No.
Commissioner Slater,
Aye.
Chair David.
Aye.
Yeah, and I think, all of those areas, but it's what, I think, I'm very sympathetic to this. It's what you don't know that you don't know is the problem, right?
But
Somebody-
at least this gives us a safety.
Sure. I'm just saying in
To
terms of
start
further
with.
research, it's what you don't know that you don't know is the problem.
Chair
We
David,
understand.
did you sign the meeting minutes? Thank you.
time, as soon as we have any useful information, we will schedule a workshop with you.
I would be especially interested in a water, everything we talk about is, I would be especially interested in what water quality that those folks need. I mean, I'm pretty darn sure that they don't want minerals in that water being pumped through their cooling towers. And so, and our aquifer is hard, really, really hard water. So they'd have to treat that water too. And then the question is, after they treat the water, where do they dispose of the waste from the treatment plant? Because that will be another issue.
Yeah, and that has to be, would have to be addressed.
Yes.
We'll find the research, we'll bring it back to you. And thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your research.
So we will close the hearing at 3:12, I guess it is. Now, do we have a workshop listed on this? Do we have more workshop
Item schedule.
on the schedule? There's a, on the agenda, there is a workshop scheduled as well. Discussion, do we have any items for discussion?
Do you have anything?
I don't have anything for.
Nothing at this time.
Okay,
I think that was just a placeholder.
You know, if we're going to, I don't know how long it take you guys to get some of the data that we just asked for, and have that in the workshop.
well, yeah, we'll have to schedule another
We'll have to
workshop.
schedule
Right,
it.
right. But what I'm saying is, I mean, I don't know how long,
I
how.
don't either.
Huh?
We're in uncharted territory.
Yeah, yeah.
But you have my commitment, we'll get to you as soon as we know anything useful.
Okay. And then as far as the future's going, were you anticipating a workshop on a different issue totally?
We have a couple of things. Go
Okay,
ahead.
okay, that's fine. I mean, we can have another workshop for a different topic, but this topic, we need a workshop for, so,
Sure.
yes.
Well, I think we have been continuing to work on our setback overlay zones, the home-based business discussions, additional road standards. This is something the fire district has brought up to us, that they'd like something more robust than IFC, International Fire Code standards. So those are some things that staff is continuing to work on. We don't have anything at this point to
And
really.
And a telecommunications facility ordinance as well.
You will let us know when you're ready for this?
Yes.
For any of these?
Yes,
Any announcements?
not from us, thank you.
Okay. Then I guess we are adjourned at 3:14.